Welcome to Along for the Ride on the Mystery Train. We are joining you yet again, live on tape from vacation. And
Mobile Mystery Studios.
the Mobile Mystery Studios.
Actually, it's the Mountainous Mobile Mystery Studios.
That's right, this time we're in the mountains. We brought the official Mystery Train microphone, so we'll see if the sound is closer to our more typical sound than the beach one, where we just used an Apple MacBook Air, just its onboard microphone. That's what we used for the beach ones, which this broadcast is probably going to be placed out of sequence in the middle of those because we recorded quite a lot when we were at the beach a few weeks ago. In today's episode, we're going to discuss August 16th, 1977, which in 2026, we're coming up on 49 years. I'm here with the bride.
Here we are in the mountains and trying to have some peace and quiet, so hopefully there'll be no children running down the hall in this particular studio like we had in some of our other mobile Mystery Train studio sessions. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is on August 16th, 1977, what do you remember about that day?
So I was 2 years old, so my memories are a little hazy, but I do remember that day. And I remember my mom was upset about something, and at some point she explained to me that Elvis Presley had died, which led to questions from me because, one, I wasn't entirely clear on who this Elvis Presley was. But then she explained to me that he was the man on the records that I played, because I did play records that belonged to my mom. Knowing what I know now, it would have been records like Jailhouse Rock, One Night with You, Heartbreak Hotel, I Was the One, records like that. It was 45 RPM type records. So anyway, I think I have gone off the rails here already.
Well, it is.
So she explained that he was the singer on the records that I loved playing and dancing around to. I don't remember the sequence of this, so I might not have the order right. I don't think I was clear yet at that age what died meant. I think ultimately she explained it to me as he went to sleep but will never wake up. I mean, this was a 2-year-old. He went to sleep and would never wake up, that he would be in heaven. I'm not sure how much of that I would have understood, and I can't tell you for sure what I thought of that back then. I kind of remember that part of the conversation. But the thing that was more pressing to me, the question I asked again as a 2-year-old, was, will his voice still be on the records? Because I was thinking if he was dead, he wouldn't be on the records anymore. What she said was his voice would always be there. That has carried me through to this day. The loss of Elvis, but his voice has indeed always been there. He's really been the soundtrack to my life. And I've heard more Elvis than she could have ever imagined at that time, because so much Elvis has come out, more so than while he was alive. And she could never have imagined the stuff that I've been able to hear, the stuff he left behind, the amount of material he left behind. It's just been really a gift to his fans.
Now, do you remember, did you play any of his records that day after you had found out that he died? Did you and your mom play any of his music?
I'm sure we did. I can kind of vaguely remember, but it's not like I can say we went and played like X song or something like that. I do remember watching with the family news coverage that night. There were like tributes on TV, of course, news reports, that kind of thing. I do remember seeing white-haired people that I didn't give me a good feeling that were on the TV talking. I now know that one of them would have been Dr. Nick. And then I can remember a couple days later watching coverage of his funeral procession with Mom, and there were people like the media. They were wearing like headsets, almost like a sports event type back then. If there was like Monday Night Football, they would be wearing like these special kind of headsets, and they were kind of wearing that, covering the funeral procession where the white hearse left Graceland and drove to the cemetery where he was initially placed.
One of the things that I should have noted, my groom here has an amazing memory. So I just want to acknowledge for the average person out there who does not remember being 2 years old or even 5 years old, that he really does have this kind of memory. So I think that's important to acknowledge. It's unusual to have memories from that age.
when I was 2, I can definitely point to things like Elvis passing away. I can remember the hoopla around Star Wars. Now, I didn't get to see it because I was too young, but I remember the hoopla. It was like on TV. It was crazy, and other things of that nature.
So, where are your mom's records, the ones you used to listen to?
For the longest time, my brother had them, but at some point, my brother gave me them and his records. So I have all of his Elvis albums and her Elvis singles. I kind of look at that as like, I mean, I have other things from her, but for me,
Mhm.
it's the most personal thing I have from mom is her, because these are the records that she had, as a teenager, I guess,
Mhm.
growing up. She would have been a teenager when Elvis first hit it big in 1956. So she was, I guess, would have been like 12 or 13 years old at that time. So these are records from that time. I can't really play them because they're in bad condition, probably due to me playing them as a 2-year-old, but they're in pretty bad condition, but they're priceless to me. I do have like a playlist I made of those songs so that if I'm doing something related to my mom, like if I'm making like one of her cookie recipes,
Mhm.
I'll play that playlist of her Elvis records. Now, the funny thing is, those records were all from the 1950s, but she actually gravitated a lot more to the 1970s Elvis. But there were certain songs from those records. Now, I didn't even know it at the time because I had lost track of the records, so I didn't know which ones she had. But I would put certain songs like on a tape for her, and certain ones would still make her dance, even though they were from the 50s. Because generally, she would get bored if I put too many 50s songs. She preferred
The beat.
she liked the beat from the 70s. She really did prefer 70s Elvis, which I have found since then is somewhat unusual among his first generation fans. Some of them I've found they really prefer the 1950s Elvis, but she was definitely not like that. She preferred the 1970s. For her, peak Elvis was Elvis Aloha from Hawaii, the 1973 satellite special. That for her was Elvis at his ultimate best.
Now, did y'all watch that? Was it truly a live special?
Well, it was before I was born, but from what I understand from the family, they did watch the Aloha special. It wasn't broadcast live in the United States. It was broadcast a couple of months later. It was broadcast to some countries on, see here, you got me going down this path. It was broadcast to some countries on January 14th, 1973. And then in the United States, it aired on NBC on April 4th, 1973. So it was sometime
Mm.
later. In the intervening time, the album came out. So I always think it's funny. It's like, well, the album was out, so, but lots of people in the U.S. think they watched it live.
Well, it was called live. It had the
Well, it
live
was, yeah,
and
Lowell from Hawaii
yeah.
live via satellite. Yeah,
So I could see how
yeah,
it might be confusing.
yeah. Colonel Parker and his
Mm.
ways.
Marketing. It's marketing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
There you go. So the records that you mentioned playing, did you, as a 2-year-old, did you actually put them on a player? Like, tell me about how you actually got the music on.
That is a good question. And that's where my memory probably fails me. I can remember playing those records myself, but I don't know that I was doing it at 2.
Mm.
It may have been like around 4. When I was, I would say 3 or 4, I got one of those little suitcase record players for kids. And at that point, I was able to play the records myself. When Elvis died, the record player we had was this big wooden mid-century modern, and it was basically a big, huge piece of furniture. And you could play records on it. I think it had a radio on it, if I remember correctly. And it was the type of record player that you could stack the records. So this is
Mm.
probably what my mom did. She probably stacked the records for me, the 45s.
Mm.
And then as each 45 would be done, it would drop the next one and then it would continue. So probably what she did was she stacked them. There's no way I could have done that as a 2-year-old. She probably stacked a bunch of them. It probably kept me busy for
Mhm.
10, 15, 20 minutes while she's doing whatever. And then she would just come and turn the stack over and we'd hear the other side. Once I had my little suitcase player, I think I was able to. And that's probably how they got scratched up. I don't say that for sure, but probably it was me that scratched them up. But I loved that little record player, and I loved listening to. Of course, I had Elvis, but I remember playing. I had a Winnie the Pooh record that had some of the famous Winnie the Pooh songs. I had a Three Little Pigs, which was the Walt Disney. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a Walt Disney movie. I forget what year it came out, but I guess in the 30s or the 40s. But this was a LP record like that told that story.
Mm.
It had the singing and everything in it. So that was a fun one. That's the two that come to mind. I know. Oh, and the other thing, I used to get the little storybook records. I remember one that my mom gave me was a Snoopy storybook record, which I think might have been Snoopy Come Home, which at the same time I didn't realize was a TV special. So I thought it was just the record, but it was actually one of the Peanut specials, which I only recently saw for the first time, having had the record. I might have the title wrong though.
Well, actually,
Yeah,
in
exactly.
case you need that.
Yeah.
With your memory being as meticulous as it is for that age, how were you exposed to Elvis? What was the first encounter you had? Who introduced you?
So meticulous is not a word I would use about my memory, especially when you're going back that far. But I wish I had an answer to that. I don't actually remember like the first encounter with Elvis. My guess would be those same records.
Mm.
I'm sure my mom was playing them. That would be my guess. There weren't any like that major Aloha special aired before I was born. So from the time I was born in 1975 until his death, probably he had movies that came on TV. I don't remember seeing any that young. I remember seeing them a little when I was a little older. I can remember watching his movies on Saturday afternoons on TV. So I would guess it's those records, but it's not like I had this, flash aha moment like, wow, this guy, I'm going to be making a podcast about him when I'm older and a website, whatever those things are. I don't remember I wish I did. But I definitely knew who he was. Obviously, I didn't know him by name, but I knew I had heard his music by the time and enjoyed his music by the time he died. So it was sometime before August 16th, 1977. As to exactly when. Knowing my mom, it was probably the day I came home from the hospital when I was born. So that's probably the first time I heard him.
In honor of his life and legacy, I think we should close out with going back to the quote your mom shared with you. So, can you repeat that for us?
Sure. So I had asked her as a 2-year-old, I asked her, would Elvis's voice still be on the records? And she said his voice would always be there. And it has been.
And it still is there
And still is there.
to walk us through life's times and things that we live in. So, today, if you're an Elvis fan and want to celebrate the legacy that he left, put on a record.
Or a CD or a digital, whatever you have. Or turn on Elvis radio. It's out there somewhere. Thank you for joining us here on Along for the Ride. Until next time, if there is a next time, may God bless you.